What's up, everyone? Kriddle here, and somebody asked me recently to do a tier list for solo ability on the different classes in Pantheon, so we're going to do that. This is mostly going to be for funsies, but it's going to be based on my opinion of the way the current game is and the different classes and what I know of each of these classes and the game. So we're going to kind of go through each of the classes and kind of tell you where they rank and why. So we're going to start out with the Cleric. The Cleric I would put between A and B tier. I'm going to put it down here at B tier, and the reason for that is because they kill very, very slowly. Now, the reason I might put it up into A tier is because recently they had an update to their techniques, giving them quite a bit more damage. They have a very good sustain ability to maintain their mana without having to sit, so they can go from mob to mob to mob, killing anything from green all the way up to yellow con mobs, and they don't really have too much trouble doing that. It just takes them a long time, which is the reason that I put them down at the B tier. Dire Lords we're going to put up here at A tier. They're one of the best soloers in the game, in my opinion. We could potentially put them up into S tier based on certain levels. So like around level 11 is when Dire Lords get their ability to completely heal themselves based on the amount of physical damage they do, and they do bleeds, which are considered physical damage. So they can fully heal themselves every so often with that ability and allow them to go from yellow con to yellow con to yellow con mob pretty much indefinitely at certain levels. The problem is, as you get a little bit higher in those levels, they cap out at chain gear, so they're going to start taking more and more and more damage, which is going to make it a little bit more difficult. But I would potentially put them up into S tier based if they had really good gear. So because they're kind of gear-based classes, as most melee classes are, we have to drop them down into the A tier. Monks, we're going to put a monk up here into the A tier as well. They are considered to be the highest DPS in the game currently. I would put them up into S tier, but they just don't have the sustain to be able to go like a Dire Lord from mob to mob to mob as quickly, but they can DPS mobs down faster than the Dire Lord can because they have so much DPS. So that's why I'm putting them in the same tier, is because of that. Necromancer. Necromancer is by far the best solo class in the game for killing group mobs. They can kill many different types of group mobs, not necessarily all of the different types of group mobs, but they can kill a lot of different ones, even all the way up to orange con group mobs I have seen Necromancers kill. They can do that very, very well, although it does take quite a bit of time, so it's not usually worth doing. They can also kill solo mobs that are, yellow, pretty consistently without too much downtime, making them very, very, very good solo classes. The Ranger, we're going to put the Ranger in A tier. They are very close to a Necromancer as far as their ability to take down group mobs, but when it comes to caster group mobs, the Ranger doesn't really have the utility to be able to take care of those. When it's a melee group mob, on the other hand, they can snare it and kind of snare kite it around. It just takes a long time yet again, very much like the Necromancer trying to kill group mobs. Rangers also do have a very small heal, but it is a heal to allow them to have that sustain to go from fight to fight to fight. They also are fairly high DPS, allowing them to kill very, very quickly. So they can have a little bit of downtime, but their kill speed is so fast that their little bit of downtime doesn't really affect them too much. The Enchanter. We're going to put the Enchanter here in B tier. Enchanters are kind of a little bit of a wonky class right now. If you know how to play an Enchanter well, you might be able to put those up into A tier. But if you're not very good at it, you probably put it down into C tier. That's kind of why I'm putting it in the B tier. Enchanters have the ability to steal mobs from the enemy, so when it comes to certain types of enemies, they can steal the spells from them, allowing them to be able to take down certain mobs a little bit easier. But at the same time, if those mobs don't have that type of ability, then they kind of fall off a little bit and they might drop down to C tier. So that's why we're putting Enchanter in the B tier. They're not really the best DPS in the game by far, but they do have a lot of utility, and if they get into trouble, they can always mez the mob. Paladins. Paladins are a lot like the Cleric, but they're a little bit better than the Cleric, so we're going to put them up into A tier. They do have the ability to heal themselves in a variety of different ways, and the reason I'm going to put them up here into A tier, though, is because they do have stuns and interrupts that allow them to take down more types of mobs than the Cleric. So there are some mobs in the game that may hit you for an insane amount of damage, and the cleric would have a little trouble killing those, because while they could heal through that, it would end up burning their mana a little bit too fast, and they would have a little bit of downtime. The paladin, on the other hand, is able to just stun the mob. They don't have mana to worry about, so they can pretty much continue to go indefinitely, assuming they don't have to use their abilities too much, because they do have what is it called, reckoning or something like that they have to build up. So as long as they don't use those abilities too often, they can pretty much bounce from mob to mob to mob, taking out mobs very quickly. Shaman we're going to put up here into A tier. In fact, it would probably be an S tier if or at level 10, it would be an S tier. It would probably be S plus tier at level 10. It is by far the most powerful OP class in the game at level 10. The problem with shamans is before level 10, they're really no different than any other class. All the classes can kind of solo fairly well up to about level 9, but as soon as shamans hit level 10, they get their pet, and that skyrockets them up because it allows them to do quite a bit more damage and have something tanking for them. They have heals, they have debuffs, they have buffs, they have dots, they have all these utility that they can use, making them very good at level 10. The reason I would not put them up here in S tier, though, is that from level 10 on, they start to lose power because their pet does not get stronger as they go up in levels, so they're basically stuck with a level 10 pet. By the time they hit about level 20, I would say that the shaman is going to start to slowly move down in tier, and it just doesn't solo as well. The Rogue. Rogue is by far the worst solo class in the game. So rogues, like every other class, can solo okay up to about level 10, but by around level 10, all the other classes start to get into their own, and they start to get some abilities that allow them to do more, whereas the Rogue technically allows them to do less in a group, because a lot of their abilities are position-based. A rogue is fantastic, assuming that the mob has its focus on another thing, any other thing, so the rogue can do its big abilities, which they need to be behind the mob or above the mob or different types of positioning. If the mob is focused on the rogue doesn't have really any way to prevent damage to it, and it's just going to die. So if it is a blue con or higher mob, it's probably going to kill the rogue. That's why I put them down into D tier. They really just can't solo at all. Summoner are by far the best sustain and XP class in the game. So you can go as a summoner and you can kill yellow con mobs pretty much indefinitely, especially once you get your pet and certain abilities, so your DPS pet. And when you get to around level 26, they even get a damage shield. And at that point, they can pretty much just point their pet at an enemy and it would kill that enemy. Then they point it at a different enemy and it kills that enemy. Summoners don't have to do anything except for say pet, go, and that's it. Summoners right now are very, very powerful solo classes, and probably the easiest class in the game if you want to just solo level up. Warriors I'm going to put into C tier. The reason I'm putting them into C tier and not down here in the D tier is because they actually can kill mobs. So if it is a blue con mob or lower, even some white con mobs, if you're geared well as a warrior, warriors are very gear dependent. But if you're geared well enough, you'll be able to kill a blue con mob or a white con mob. The problem, though, with warriors is there's going to be a lot of downtime. So you might be able to win the fight, but you're going to be at about 20% health when you win, and you're going to have to sit there and wait for your health to come back. So it's just a ton of downtime with the warrior. Wizard, we're going to put up here at the A tier. Wizards seem like they would be absolutely fantastic at soloing, and they are around level 1 to 10. They can actually 1 or 2 shot most mobs at that level. They can even continue to 1 or 2 shot mobs all the way up to probably level 15 or so. The problem with wizards is they don't have the sustain that a summoner or even a necromancer have. After the wizard uses up all of their mana or all of their focus, they have to sit down and they have to let that regenerate. They do have ways that they can regenerate their focus, but those are on fairly long cooldown timers. So once they blow all of that, they can no longer do anything else, and they do have to sit down and wait a little bit. That's why I'm putting them in A tier. If there was a way to get some of that focus back a little bit faster, they would definitely be up here in S tier for soloing. Anyway, that's going to be it for my tier list. Please let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree, where you would put some of your different classes in those tier lists. I would love to hear it. Hopefully I see you in the next one. Bye.